tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
If Trump is imposing tariffs, we're ready.
Donald Trump says tariffs on Canadian imports will start on Tuesday. More on the confusion and Canada's response. Plus,
the meat and potatoes, like maybe even January, right? But we're trying to protect the plate.
amid the tariff threats, the BC government prepares to unveil a provincial budget after big election promises and a sizable deficit. And
the person here could have died, and the daycare being right there, the people in the daycare, those children.
Mounties say they found a body after a house exploded in Langley, and the blast may be linked to a drug lab.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Donald Trump says 25% tariffs on Canadian imports will start on Tuesday. Speaking from the White House earlier in the day, the U.S. president says there's no room left to make a deal. For his part, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau now says Ottawa is moving ahead with retaliatory tariffs of its own, saying there is no justification for Trump's actions. Olivia Stefanovich has the latest.
On the eve of the latest tariff deadline,
we don't know what's coming tomorrow. I'm not even sure if President Trump knows what's coming tomorrow.
Confusion from Canadian officials.
I'd love to say that I know all the answers. I don't, and I wish I had a better answer for Canadians and those whose jobs are at risk.
I have no news to report on that front. The fact is that our government's first duty is to try and avoid these tariffs.
The Trump administration previously said the levies could be all but avoided.
The Mexicans and the Canadians have done a nice job on the border, meaning you have illegal crossings at their lowest level ever.
But the U.S. president himself says the plan to impose sweeping tariffs on his top two trading partners is moving full steam ahead.
On the tariffs, is there any room left for Canada and Mexico to make a deal before midnight?
No room left for Mexico or for Canada. No, the tariffs, they're all set. They go into effect tomorrow.
As Donald Trump added yet another reason for his decision.
Tomorrow, tariffs 25% on Canada and 25% on Mexico, and that'll start. So they're going to have a tariff. So what they have to do is build their car plants, frankly, and other things in the United States, in which case they have no tariffs.
If Trump is imposing tariffs, we're ready.
Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister says Ottawa is prepared with a $155 billion retaliatory response.
There's a level of unpredictability and chaos that comes out of the Oval Office, and we will be dealing with it.
The decision that's been announced, I think, is deeply regrettable and will have a very significant impact, not just on Canadians, but also on Americans. And so the dialogue will continue. But we are prepared to respond as required.
Unless he changes his mind, Trump's first round of tariffs are expected to take effect at midnight, marking the biggest increase to trade barriers that Canada has ever seen. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
Now, amid those tariff threats, BC's finance minister will present the NDP's government's budget on Tuesday as well. This comes 5 months after the provincial election campaign, where David Eby promised big spending on healthcare, transit, and education, among other things. Still, as Katie DeRosa reports, the tariffs have many worried those election promises will not materialize.
David Eby made big promises on the campaign trail, from new hospital towers, expanded SkyTrain lines, rapid bus service, and investments in schools. But with the looming threat of U.S. tariffs and pressure to dig the province out of its $9 billion fiscal hole, this urban planner says even a meat and potatoes budget would be generous.
I think it was meat and potatoes, maybe even January, right? But we're trying to protect the plate. And I think folks are very concerned about, having a plate to eat on.
The NDP has already broken its signature election promise, the $1,000 grocery rebate and middle-class tax cut. This economist says healthcare and education are the biggest budget items, areas which the NDP would be wise not to cut.
If anything, we need some reinvestment in healthcare.
The strained healthcare system has led to shuttered emergency rooms in rural communities and a cancer care system so backlogged, patients have been forced to seek care in the U.S. The head of the BC Nurses Union says she wants to see the NDP deliver on its promise to roll out incentives and loan forgiveness to attract nurses.
But we cannot have a strong economy if we don't have an accessible, dependable healthcare system.
New hospital towers in Nanaimo and Langley were also touted by Eby on the campaign trail. On education, the NDP promised mental health counselors in every school and educational assistants in every kindergarten to grade 3 classroom.
I'd be lying if I said that the context that we're living in right now doesn't cause me a bit of concern. But the one context that hasn't changed is the needs of the children that drove those promises.
To address clogged roads, the NDP promised to extend the SkyTrain line from Broadway to UBC, expand rapid bus transit to the North Shore, and extend the West Coast Express rail line to Chilliwack.
I think that the pace of these projects may change as opposed to whether these projects will happen or not.
Many of the promises came without a price tag. This as business leaders urge the NDP to shrink the deficit.
We have to ensure that we're on a path back to balance, and we have to ensure for British Columbians that we're spending responsibly.
As we wait to see if Brenda Bailey can deliver a budget that makes good on the NDP's election promises, one thing is clear. The threat of U.S. tariffs has completely changed BC's fiscal landscape. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Victoria.
Now, a day before the budget, Finance Minister Brenda Bailey skipped the tradition of buying new shoes. Instead, Bailey bought a pair of second-hand, locally made John Fluvog kicks, possible hints of the kind of budget she will share. Bailey was asked if the NDP will fulfill key election promises like mental health counselors in schools.
Things like healthcare and education and safety and social services are protected in this budget. And at the same time, we're sharpening our pencil. We're looking for efficiencies.
BC Conservative finance critic Peter Millibar is predicting a budget that delivers a deficit north of $10 billion. He's skeptical of the New Democrats' promises of fiscal restraint.
Now, with a worsening economy, with an even harder path to get to a balanced budget, we're supposed to believe that they've actually saw the light and they're going to get to a balanced budget.
As the budget drops Tuesday afternoon, CBC News will have full coverage for you with Michelle Elliott starting right after BC Today. She'll be joined by Mo Amir and Stuart Prest as they break down what is being called a budget in response to those U.S. tariff threats. That's from 1 to 3 p.m. Pacific on CBC Radio 1 and streaming on CBC Gem, YouTube, and our FAST channel. RCMP and Langley have confirmed human remains are found at the site where a house exploded on Friday. Now police believe an illegal drug lab may be behind that deadly blast. More now from Michelle Gassoub.
It's devastating to know that somebody has lost their life.
Kelly Cresswell has lived near 196th Street in Langley for 3 years. She was horrified Friday when a neighboring house exploded, badly damaging several properties.
Absolutely horrible, because this is a family neighborhood.
Corporal Zainal Sharoom from Langley RCMP confirmed Monday illegal drug activity is being investigated as a cause.
We're considering factors that may be consistent with an illegal drug extraction lab.
On Friday, 2 people were airlifted to hospital. Now, the remains of 1 person have been found in the wreckage of the house. They have yet to be identified. Cresswell says it's lucky more lives weren't lost.
The person here could have died, and the daycare being right there, the people in the daycare, those children, it would have been horrible, devastating. It could have blown the whole neighborhood up.
RCMP say it's still early in the investigation. Anyone with information is asked to come forward. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Langley.
Police in Surrey say one man was hurt after someone attacked him with a weapon at Holland Park on Saturday night. Officers say after the attack, the victim went to a nearby business on King George Boulevard, close to the SkyTrain station. Paramedics treated him there before taking him to hospital. He's since been released. Police say the attack is believed to be targeted. The force says a suspect is described as a clean-shaven black man in his 30s with a slim build, wearing a dark hoodie and pants. If you've been keeping count, southwestern BC has felt at least 3 earthquakes in the past couple of weeks. Seismologist Johanna Wagstaff says they don't make a larger quake more or less likely.
Does all the recent earthquake activity have you wondering, how worried should I be? The short answer is not any more than usual. There have actually been 3 earthquakes of magnitude 4 or higher felt in southwestern BC in the past 3 weeks, 2 of which were felt by thousands of people. Know this though, these earthquakes do not make a larger earthquake any more or any less likely to happen. It's not unusual to get earthquakes here. In fact, we get over 1,000 every year, multiple every day, but it is unusual to get back-to-back quakes that we actually feel. The reason why we felt them, they were shallow and they happened very close to large populations. To understand why I'm not any more or any less worried as a seismologist, you first have to understand plate tectonics. So the outer layer of Earth is basically like a cracked eggshell, and the inside of Earth is like a convection oven. So all these little shell bits or plates are moving around and bumping into each other. Southwestern BC sits on the boundary between an ocean plate and a continental plate. The ocean plate is getting pushed under the North American plate. Because of that, the Earth under our feet is always moving, usually only as fast as fingernails grow, but sometimes more violently when things get stuck. We get 3 basic kinds of earthquakes here. Number 1 is the kind we've been feeling for the past few weeks, crustal quakes. These happen in the North America plate, so they're all going to be fairly shallow, sort of max out at magnitude 7 or 8, but they're going to be located much closer to major communities like Vancouver and Victoria. We also get what's called deep earthquakes. So these are happening in the Juan de Fuca ocean plate. They're also much deeper, about 40 to 60 kilometers, but can be felt if they're big enough, like the 2001 magnitude 6.8 many of you might remember. Okay, and last but certainly not least, mega thrust earthquakes, aka the big one we keep talking about. This is an earthquake right on the boundary between these 2 plates, well off the coast of Vancouver Island. It stretches over 1,000 kilometers all the way down to Northern California, and it's stuck. When it happens, it will be a magnitude 9 or stronger. A tsunami will be generated. Here's the thing. These ones only happen once every 200 to 800 years. The last time we had one was in 1700, so it could be within our lifetime or not. Here's another reason why I'm not any more worried about the big one. Megathrust earthquakes tend to happen during an earthquake swarm. Thousands of crustal microquakes within a few months that are all too small to feel. And right now, the data indicates we are not really in the middle of one of these swarms. The last one was August to September 2024. But that's why all our building codes and retrofits have the big one in mind. But regardless of the type of earthquake, if the epicenter is close to where people live, it can be damaging. The good news is that so far, these have been good earthquakes, the kind that remind us we need a kit, we need a plan, and we've had a couple of reminders now. So go do it, and then I give you permission to stop worrying.
Time for a check on the weather. Stephanie Hungerford is here for Darius Madavi. How's it looking out there?
Well, you know what? Right now, just a little bit cloudy in the lower mainland, but after midnight, there is a system that will be rolling in, Dan. So we are going to see some drizzles throughout the evening and then into tomorrow morning. But really, the rain's going to start tomorrow afternoon. So that's where we're going to see all throughout the lower mainland, Victoria into Abbotsford, Chilliwack. We will see some fog tonight as well. So you could hear the foghorns, which is kind of a lovely sound for all of us. And then we have the rain tonight, and then tomorrow again that drizzle. So we will have sun on Thursday though. So I'm, fingers crossed for that, Dan.
Looking forward to that. Okay, thanks, Stephanie. The man believed to be Canada's oldest living Second World War veteran has died. Albert Middleton was just shy of 110 years old when he died at a Veterans Care Lodge in Saanich last month. Middleton was just 14 when he came to Canada from England. A celebration of life will be held at the lodge on March 11th, which would have been his 110th birthday. Still to come, Vancouver is mulling the idea of allowing bars, clubs, and restaurants to stay open for longer. More on that story after this.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell. Here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. Stream your favorite CBC dramas or comedies 24/7 on demand on the CBC Gem app. Plus, you can live stream CBC Vancouver News. Check it out at gem.cbc.ca. And never miss a special programming series or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
Vancouver is considering allowing bars, clubs, and restaurants to stay open longer. The hospitality industry is welcoming the move as many businesses struggle to make ends meet. Yasmin Khanea has more.
Longer hours means more booze and more bucks.
Opening up later for sure will relate to a better profit margin, but it'll also relate to a better experience for the consumer.
The city is asking the public what it thinks about allowing all downtown bars, pubs, and nightclubs to stay open until 3 a.m. every night of the week, and allowing restaurants across Vancouver that are licensed to serve alcohol to stay open until 2 a.m.
We've received about 2,800 survey responses so far.
The potential changes have put provincial liquor laws in the spotlight, as some experts say they're too strict.
In British Columbia, having a liquor license has always been viewed as being a privilege. In other provinces like Ontario and Alberta, it's considered a right.
Unlike some other provinces, BC has two types of licenses that allow businesses to serve liquor. With a liquor primary license, booze can be your main focus. But the application process can be long and complicated. So many businesses instead opt for a food primary license. They can still serve alcohol, but food has to be the main attraction.
You do get some situations where a food primary license can become non-compliant because they are operating outside their class of license.
Indeed. In February, a Prince Rupert bar was slapped with a $10,000 fine and a 22-day license suspension after it served people after hours and held a karaoke night against regulations.
What are we living, like a real-life Footloose?
The province says liquor is a regulated substance that can have detrimental social and health impacts, and BC's licensing framework is designed to balance business interests with public safety and community well-being. But the province says it's currently reviewing the liquor license classes. It could be months before a later last call comes to Vancouver. The hospitality industry hopes to cheer on more changes soon. Yasmin Ghaneya, CBC News, Vancouver.
A young Ukrainian refugee has built a life here in BC after fleeing Russia's brutal invasion. But she now says steep international tuition fees may stop her from attending university. Michelle Gomez has her story.
BC has become home for 17-year-old Hanna Ushkanova. She fled war in Ukraine 3 years ago and was living in a refugee camp in Greece when this Chilliwack family took her in as their own.
They had so much heart for me, and they give me a place, and they give me so much love and support throughout all of my time that I've been here.
Emily Robertson, who is the same age as Ushkanova, knew she wanted to do something to help when the war first broke out.
Amity came to us and said, I want to help. I want to find somebody that can live with us, help them get settled in Canada, away from the war.
The two have quickly become like sisters, and despite the adversity she's faced, Ushkanova has been thriving in school and has been accepted to study sciences at UBC.
I wanted to work on cell research to find different cures for illnesses.
But the family says they can't afford the steep international tuition fees. In 2022, the province temporarily mandated universities to offer domestic tuition rates to Ukrainian students entering under the emergency visa like Ushkanova, but UBC has now ended that policy.
They're not like a regular international student who's coming from perhaps a position of wealth, so it's impossible for them.
There are other universities in Canada that still offer domestic tuition to Ukrainian refugees, such as the University of Alberta, but for Hannah, moving would mean no support system.
She's uprooting her whole life again, and if she stays in BC, we're here to support her. We'll continue to be right by her side through everything.
I think I feel like this place is my home now.
UBC said it is aware the federal government recently extended the deadline for Ukrainian refugees to apply for a new study permit and will discuss the possible implications in the days ahead. Meanwhile, the family says they've reached out to UBC as well as the province, but haven't heard back. Michelle Gomez, CBC News, Chilliwack.
There's a look at the wet afternoon that was in Tofino. Stephanie Hungerford has your BC-wide weather forecast coming up. A BC nonprofit is calling on Metro Vancouver to shut down its waste burning operation in Burnaby. Zero Waste BC says that facility's incineration approach to waste management is costly and pollutes the air. Now, the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment, BC, is one of several environmental groups joining that call. Our medical columnist, Dr. Melissa Lem, is the president of CAPE. We appreciate you being here, Dr. Lem. What's the major concern here with the incinerator?
Well, this is a really complex issue that brings together the need for energy generation, landfill capacity, and air pollution. But from a purely human health perspective, burning garbage and waste is a very polluting way to generate energy. And if we're going to be investing in upgrading our energy systems, those investments should be in renewable and clean energy that doesn't harm human health.
So, according to Health Canada, it says the biggest source of dioxins in the country is the large-scale burning of municipal and medical waste. Remind us what are dioxins and how do they affect us?
Well, dioxins are generated when we burn substances that contain carbon and chlorine, and they're part of this overall umbrella of chemicals known as persistent organic pollutants. And the reason is that they accumulate and last in the environment and our bodies when we're exposed to them. And the problem is that when we're exposed to them, they can lead to all kinds of different health issues like immune function issues, liver dysfunction, and certain kinds of cancer.
What about, do they affect people in different ways, for example, men and women?
Well, they are known to be hormone disruptors, and so they can cause women's health issues like irregular periods, early menopause, infertility, and birth defects, and in some cases lead to breast cancer. But really the impact has to do with how much you're exposed to, the method of exposure, what other chemicals you're exposed to with it. And something we need to remember is when you smell or see something burning, so whether it's cigarette smoke or natural gas in your stove or wood or industrial pollution or even forest fires, typically dioxins are being generated.
What if, for example, somebody that doesn't live very close to this incinerator? Is proximity an issue here in terms of they're not going to be affected versus somebody else who's closer?
Absolutely. The closer you are to this waste generation facility, the more you are affected. And this is something that CAPE is really focused on. So we are an organization that is composed of volunteer physicians, and our mission is to protect human health by protecting the planet. And we really focus in on this fact that only about 20% of our health status comes from what we do in the healthcare system. The other 80% depend on factors like our life, like our biology, the environment, and genetics. And when we don't have clean air, clean water to drink, or a safe climate to live in, then these systems that support our health and our healthcare systems start to break down.
What about, you mentioned energy generation in BC moving to more electrification. Is that the only solution you see in terms of shutting this thing down and losing whatever power it was generating?
Again, it's a very complex issue because the question is, what will this energy and waste burning plant be replaced with? And we know that the International Energy Agency has said that we cannot invest in more fossil fuel projects if we want to keep global warming to a livable amount. So we really have to look at this issue in a dedicated way and make sure that we're choosing the cleanest and the most efficient way of generating energy possible.
Right. Dr. Melissa Lem, we always appreciate your time and expertise. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Dan.
Back to our top story now. In just hours, the potentially economy-battering tariffs Donald Trump threatened against Mexico and Canada are set to kick in. 25% on most goods, 10% on energy. Ottawa says it will respond with 25% tariffs against almost $160 billion worth of American goods, which our Prime Minister says will remain in place until the American trade action is withdrawn. More now from the CBC's Katie Simpson.
Thank you very much.
It's been called an attack, a betrayal, the abandoning of an ally. Donald Trump confirming his tariff plan on Canada, the justification swinging wildly. First, saying it's about creating U.S. auto jobs.
Very importantly, tomorrow tariffs 25% on Canada and 25% on Mexico, and that'll start. So they're going to have a tariff. So what they have to do is build their car plants, frankly, and other things in the United States.
Then Trump backtracked, saying it's really about fentanyl. Too much enters the U.S. Canada, Mexico, and China are to blame, and he's not open to further negotiations.
No room left for Mexico or for Canada. No, the tariffs, they're all set. They go into effect tomorrow.
There had been hope a worst-case scenario could have been avoided. With suggestions hours earlier, Trump was still open to lower tariff rates.
He's got to decide how he wants to play it, and that's the key to the president's advisors. We are around telling him all the details, but then he's going to decide this afternoon, and tomorrow we're going to put out those tariffs.
This is just the first blow in Trump's trade war. Additional 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum start March 12th. Broader tariffs on all U.S. trading partners start April 2nd. Those details still need to be announced. The tariffs sparking blowback from Democrats in the Senate.
Families will suffer. Businesses will suffer. You said you'd bring down costs on day one, Donald Trump. Yet here, 1 month in, you're doing something that would raise costs significantly.
But Trump is set on this America First agenda, an existential Groundhog Day of repeating deadlines, mixed messaging, and a sense of dread for Canada. This is the new normal.
So I don't see the president wavering on any of this, because he knows in order to get to a world in which America is strong and prosperous with real wages going up and factory jobs, this is the path.
The CBC's Katie Simpson reporting. Now, Ottawa has promised a swift response to those tariffs, but as Catherine Cullen explains, it hasn't been clear where Canada stands, even as the clock runs down before the tariffs slam into place.
I know that a lot of Canadians are asking themselves what is going on right now.
Despite all Canadian efforts to fend off tariffs, officials spent much of the day waiting to find out what was next.
As of this moment, I have no news to report on that front.
There's been no word like today, no? Not to my knowledge, no.
We don't know what's coming tomorrow. I'm not even sure if President Trump knows what's coming tomorrow.
Then, mid-afternoon, the president was explicit.
Very importantly, tomorrow tariffs.
Leaving many Canadians, including federal ministers, shaking their heads.
The decision that's been announced, I think, is deeply regrettable and will have a very significant impact.
We know that this is an existential threat to us, and there are thousands of jobs in Canada at stake.
The federal government had a multi-phase plan for counter-tariffs ready the last time Trump leveled this threat. Melanie Joly says that pushback is still ready to go.
We've done the work. We are ready should the U.S. decide to launch their trade war. We are ready with $155 billion worth of tariffs.
If I'm hearing you correctly, you are ready, sir, to go to war, to go to a trade war with the...
Ontario's premier seethed on U.S. cable TV about how he might push back, from cutting off critical mineral supplies to no longer buying U.S. alcohol and more.
I'm going after absolutely everything, and I don't want to. We keep the lights on to 1.5 million homes and manufacturing in New York, in Michigan, and in Minnesota. If he wants to destroy our economy and our families, I will shut down the electricity.
Canadians in the auto sector have warned these tariffs could lead to jobs being hurt in the U.S. Almost 1 million Americans could face temporary layoffs, says one representative.
Go ahead, put the tariffs on, and then explain to people in Michigan and Alabama and Tennessee and Texas why they're home from work.
We have more developing news tonight. The White House says it is pausing military aid to Ukraine. This comes days after U.S. President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance berated Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in the Oval Office, criticizing him for being insufficiently grateful for Washington's backing in its war with Russia. The White House says it's reviewing aid to ensure, quote, Ukraine is contributing to a solution. Tensions are high in the Middle East over the fate of the ceasefire in Gaza. The first phase expired over the weekend. As mediators make efforts to salvage the deal, Israel, backed by the Trump administration, says there's now a new plan. But as Sasha Petrusik explains, so far, Hamas is rejecting it.
The delivery of aid seems to have become a very blunt negotiating tool on behalf of Israel as it tries to get Hamas to sign on to a proposal it says came from the United States, but which Israel is now pushing to extend the ceasefire as it's been going now on a bit-by-bit basis without any commitment to pull out any more troops or to declare peace in Gaza. This new proposal would cover 50 days, the holy Muslim month of Ramadan, which we're into right now, and then the period after that, which would be Jewish Passover. So by the end of April, what Israel is proposing is that all the hostages be out and that the ceasefire continue up until that point. It would, of course, leave the door open for fighting to continue at that time.
Half of the hostages would be released right away, and the remaining half would be released if we reach an agreement on a permanent ceasefire. Again, Israel has accepted this plan, I accepted this plan, but so far, Hamas has rejected it.
Now, the proposal that Hamas is backing, which Israel calls unacceptable, seems to be based on the original ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. That would see the war end and Israeli troops pulled out and all the hostages released. That's 59 Israeli hostages who are currently still in Gaza. We believe that about 24 of those are still alive. In Gaza, of course, if aid is stopped for a longer period of time, many people there fear that that is going to lead to the kind of difficulties that they had for many, many months during the fighting itself. Other countries have rejected and denounced Israel's plan, in particular Egypt and Qatar. But as far as Israel is concerned, the main thing is whether the U.S. backs it. The last comments from U.S. President Donald Trump seem to have given Israel a blank slate to do whatever it wanted. And it may be that that's the approach that Netanyahu is taking right now. In any case, without those trucks moving in, it could be some difficult time in Gaza, and it may not, in the end, bring Hamas back to the negotiating table. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Still to come, a BC-based effort to raise awareness for civil unrest in Myanmar. How these Canadians are shining a light on the country's civil war and humanitarian crisis. You'll want to see this. Stephanie Hungerford is back with our BC-wide weather forecast and the provincial precipitation picture.
Yes,
That took a lot of effort to say.
it's PPP.
There you go.
We're going to coin that term now, Dan.
If only there was another phrase for that anagram. Oh, wait. Oh, well.
Wait,
That's
oh,
okay.
wait. You know, it's not going to be too bad throughout the province. Really, it's going to be quite nice throughout the province, except for the south coast. We are getting that rain that is heading in tonight after midnight. Some drizzles, some gusty winds in Vancouver, Victoria for tomorrow. We could see gusts up to 50 kilometers per hour. So it's not going to be too bad, but we will see that rain. And Thursday is when we're really going to see the sun roll in really throughout the province. I know this map might look a little bit scary because you see some snow, but it's really not that bad considering what we've seen over the last couple of months. Tomorrow night, still below zero in a lot of the province, except for the south coast. Cranbrook might see some flurries tomorrow, but for most of the province, pretty nice tonight. Tomorrow, again, really nice. Fort St. John, seeing some beautiful sun up there, 3 degrees, very mild temperatures. You can see that we're really heading into that springtime weather. We can feel it finally. And then the Wednesday's highs, 10 really across the south coast and into the interior. And we've got Fort Nelson looking above zero, same with Dease Lake. So things are looking up for spring. Thursday's highs, much of the same. It is going to get much warmer as we head towards the weekend. And for the 5-day forecast for Metro Vancouver, yes, some rain Tuesday, Wednesday, but Wednesday night it will be clearing up. And then Thursday, we've got that beautiful day we can all go outside and enjoy. Friday, the rain unfortunately moves back in, but great warm temperatures here. We've got Saturday, we're going to see 13, and we're hoping that that warm weather is going to start to continue. And we're going to see those lovely snowdrops continue to come up. Not snowdrops from the sky. We're talking snowdrops from the ground.
Very good. Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
if you're a gardener, Dan, I don't know.
Thank you for clarifying from PPP to snowdrops.
That's
Very
right.
good. Thanks, Stephanie. So as the humanitarian crisis worsens across Myanmar in Southeast Asia, British Columbians are doing what they can to raise awareness about the years of civil unrest. Janella Hamilton has more on their push to get Canadians to pay attention to a part of the globe that's often forgotten.
Myanmar has been embroiled in armed conflict since 1948, when the country, then known as Burma, gained independence from the United Kingdom. Since then, the country has experienced decades of civil unrest and repressive military rule. In 1988, a student-led uprising saw hundreds of thousands of people, including monks and children, protest against the military government. These mass protests, which were mostly concentrated in the ethnic minority states, largely organized by university students. Uso took part in that civil disobedience movement. He was in high school at the time.
Many of my friends died in front of me in about 40 days period. We estimated more than 10,000 people died.
Soon after, the activists had to flee to Thailand to evade arrest and persecution by the military.
About midnight, about 2-3 guys came, knocked the door, and then they said, "Oh, please follow us." And then sometimes they just disappear. Yeah, they never return.
So's been advocating for better democratic rights in Myanmar ever since. And while violence has always simmered in the country, the fighting escalated in 2021 after the Myanmar military regime overthrew the democratically elected government. The army's takeover sparking the formation of rebel groups and pro-democracy militias. Experts say fighting has spiraled across much of the country, including in areas which had rarely seen conflict in previous decades. It's left a veritable patchwork of different military groups controlling parts of the country.
Since then, many people follow the protests, the civil disobedience movement, but the military cracked down and they committed widespread violence, including killings, arrests, and torture. So that pushed many people, thousands of civilians, students, and activists to take up arms, which lead to a nationwide armed resistance.
A 2024 report by the United Nations found the military's violence against civilians last year reached unprecedented levels. The UN says across Myanmar, nearly 20 million people are in need of humanitarian assistance, and more than 3.5 million people have been displaced, a third of whom are children. Ong Tin is the owner of a maze house in Vancouver. His sister and 3 nephews are among millions displaced in Myanmar. He says they've been hiding in a makeshift camp in the jungle for nearly a year.
That area is not even secure. Everybody can come and get it, even the military.
He does what he can to help his family and others back home. Once a month, Tin and others from Vancouver's small Burmese community spend hours cooking and packaging hundreds of traditional meals to sell here in the Lower Mainland. Money raised goes to buy supplies for those who are displaced through NGOs.
Because of older people, very young people, little child, so there's they need a lot of support for the medication and then food and shelter.
And so I've always been reluctant to share my heritage. Then as I grew older, I realized I shouldn't have been ashamed.
Mi-Lin Kim's parents fled Myanmar's Chin state. She says empowering and educating Chin youth through cultural preservation is paramount.
In 2021, when the coup took over, a lot of us didn't know how to react, whereas our parents were deeply affected by it because they have gone through this already back in '88. And so in our generation, we knew we needed to do something about it.
Through her work with the Chin Youth Organization of North America, the 25-year-old UBC student has already met with policymakers in Ottawa after recently visiting refugee camps in neighboring countries like India.
We heard all sorts of stories that were really heartbreaking, stories where they had people die on their way to refuge. We had stories where when the fire broke, when the Burmese SAC, when they burnt down Tantlang, and all homes were on fire, stories where I couldn't bring anything with me. I only bought a blanket for me because we thought we would return back home.
4 years later, analysts say the Myanmar military regime is starting to lose control of vast areas of the country, with resistant forces making major territorial gains. An election is set for this fall, but some experts say the future of the country remains uncertain.
The election that proposed by junta will definitely not be free and fair.
These advocates say as the civil war rages on, more international funding is needed for aid and protections against gender-based violence, as well as greater sanctions and support for young activists to continue their education in Canada. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Still to come, we'll bring you the glamour, the glitz, and the winners from last night's Academy Awards. Stay with us.
I'm Stephen Quinn, and I love living here in Vancouver, BC. It's a city with world-renowned beauty, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows. In our new daily podcast, This is Vancouver, we're exploring the diverse range of issues and stories in the city, the good, the bad, and everything in between, as told by the people who live it every day. Don't miss This is Vancouver, available wherever you get your podcasts, and I'll talk to you soon.
It was a night of movie star appearances and record-setting wins at the Oscars.
The most awards were handed out to an indie film about a young Brooklyn sex worker. The CBC's Eli Glasner has more from outside the Dolby Theatre in Hollywood.
Anora. After an Oscar race that was filled with controversy and scandal, in the end, the Oscars followed the script nearly to the letter with Anora, a movie that began winning back at the Cannes Film Festival, winning here at the Academy Awards 5 out of 6 Oscars in the categories it was nominated. The director, Sean Baker, now tied with the one and only Walt Disney as someone who took home 4 Oscars in a single night, including his award for Best Original Screenplay, Best Director, and Best Editor.
Mikey Madison.
And in the actress category, Anora created a bit of a surprise. Mikey Madison winning the award for Best Actress, and that meant that Demi Moore, who was widely expected to win that Oscar, did not for her performance in The Substance, a film where she played an aging actress in Hollywood. Another surprise came from the film I'm Still Here. This is a movie set in Brazil about a family suffering under a brutal dictatorship. It won in the international feature category. There were many journalists that came to Los Angeles from Brazil to support the film, and around the world, when the movie won, it led to scenes like this in a control room in Rio. And Conan O'Brien was the host with the most, who had some fun ideas on how to keep the show on time and on schedule.
First, if your acceptance speech goes too long, instead of playing you off with music, we have something much more powerful. We'll cut to John Lithgow in the audience looking not angry, but slightly disappointed.
Although, as always, the show did go long, and if you saw Adrian Brody winning for his performance in The Brutalist, you might see that maybe he could have used a little prodding from John Lithgow. Eli Glasner, CBC News, Los Angeles.
They may not have won an Oscar, but the team behind the documentary Sugarcane did make history, and a statement on the red carpet at last night's ceremony.
The movie tells the painful story of residential schools in Canada, mainly the former Kamloops Residential School, and features members of the Williams Lake First Nation. The nation's chief, Willie Sellers, was there.
And I said, you know what, I'm gonna dance on the red carpet. I'm gonna grass dance on the red carpet and bless these grounds for everybody that walks across this carpet. We found like a good gap, and I just went for it. Yeah, it really is a surreal experience. Not in a million years would I have ever thought that I'd be walking the red carpet and participating in the Oscars. You know, we have become this beacon of hope for Indigenous peoples across North America with the documentary of Sugarcane. The way that Julian and Emily and Kellen were able to eloquently put this journey together on the big screen that got us a nomination and a chance to go to the Oscars is pretty surreal. You know, I would have to confirm it, but I think the only Indigenous representation at the 97th Academy Awards this year. You know, we're on the red carpet, and you know, I'm missing home. I'm missing my kids. I'm just trying to like enjoy the moment and live the moment. But I have a ton of anxiety and stress. And I know when I'm battling with those things back home, we always turn to our culture. We always turn to what makes us comfortable. And I said, you know what? I'm going to dance on the red carpet. And that's what we love to do as Indigenous people, is represent. And I thought that we did a really great job of that last night, not only on the red carpet and with the film, but with the outfits that we wore. You know, all 4 of us represented for us.
Love that.
That was really
So
beautiful.
cool. And beautiful suit. Sage, he said, right?
Sage.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as on YouTube and our website, cbc.ca/BC.
And we'll have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National. We'll see you then. Good night.